As dawn breaks over Fairview Hollow, the familiar chorus of Eli Carter's hens fills the air, until a note on his porch warns, "Silence them, or we will." A thin layer of frost clung to the edge of Eli's screen door as he stepped outside, coffee in one hand, feed bucket in the other. The sky was just beginning to blush pink behind the outline of the barn, and the steady rhythm of clucking from the coop carried across the pasture like an old gospel hymn. It was a sound Eli had grown up with. The hens didn't just greet the day, they greeted him. He shuffled across the gravel, boots crunching, still wearing the plaid flannel shirt he'd patched 3 times but couldn't let go of. His AM radio, propped near the porch window, murmured with the familiar voice of Dale from Morning Crop Talk. Dale was giving weather updates and slipping in corny jokes about seed prices, and Eli chuckled without meaning to. When he opened the coop, the chickens responded with flutters, pecks, and the occasional squawk of impatience. He greeted them by name. "Good morning, Beatrice. Don't be pecking Daisy again now." He tossed handfuls of feed with practiced ease. As he bent down to adjust the latch, his eyes caught something fluttering against the wooden rail. Taped with old masking tape, barely holding in the breeze, was a piece of plain white paper. No name, no signature, just blocky letters written in dark ink. "Silence them, or we will." He stared at it for a long moment. The chickens clucked behind him, unconcerned, oblivious. He peeled the note off slowly and folded it twice before tucking it into his back pocket. Inside the coop yard, the wind had nudged the old wooden plaque on the fence post, just enough to catch the light. The carved letters had faded, but he could still read them. "Let no one silence what's honest and rooted." His mother's words, Clara Jean. She'd nailed that plaque in place the same year the town paved the road and put up speed limit signs. Eli glanced toward the west edge of the property, where the newer houses started, the ones with bright mailboxes and lawn care flags fluttering in the breeze. He didn't know most of the folks who lived there, and truth be told, they didn't seem interested in knowing him either. An hour later, Rosa Myers came by, as she did most Tuesdays. A basket in one hand, her other tapping a rhythm against her cane. "Brought you one of Edna's apple pies, still warm." Eli smiled as he opened the screen door. "You spoil me," she shrugged. "Better than letting you eat instant oatmeal for dinner again." They sat on the porch for a while, watching the breeze run through the trees and ruffle the chickens' feathers in the distance. Rosa sipped coffee, then leaned in slightly. "You hear about the new Egg Day lineup? They're adding a silent auction this year." Eli nodded, but he was only half listening. He finally pulled the folded note from his pocket and handed it to her. Rosa squinted, read it, then sighed with a tight shake of her head. "That new HOA gal isn't from around here and doesn't understand what these birds mean." "She send this?" "Who else would?" Rosa replied. "Karen Whitmore's been looking at your coop like it's a garbage pile since the day she moved in. Thinks she can HOA her way through Fairview Hollow." They sat in silence for a while longer, the only sounds being the clucking and the low rumble of a tractor passing somewhere out on County Road 6. Later that day, Eli walked past the mailbox and noticed a new metal sign hammered into the grass beside it. Bright white, red letters. "Noise standards under review, community feedback, welcomed." A QR code glared from the bottom corner like an eye. He muttered something under his breath, pulled his hat lower over his brow, and walked back to the porch. As the sun began to drop, casting long shadows across the field, a vehicle rolled up the gravel drive. A sleek black SUV, city plates. Eli set his coffee down. He knew that car. It had been parked 2 houses down for a week now. Karen Whitmore stepped out, clipboard in hand, dressed in beige slacks and a blouse that had never known the smell of manure. 2 others followed her, HOA board members, he assumed, though neither introduced themselves. She walked straight to the coop gate without waiting for an invitation. Her heels sunk slightly in the soft dirt, and she grimaced at the chickens as if they might stain her shoes just by existing. "Mr. Carter," she said crisply, glancing down at her clipboard, "we're receiving noise complaints. You have 14 days to resolve it." He crossed his arms. "Resolve what, exactly?" "The disturbance. Crowing, clucking. Some neighbors can't hear their morning meditation. Others are concerned about hygiene. And general neighborhood standards." Eli didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Karen leaned closer, her voice dropping to something cooler, firmer. "We're watching, and this isn't just about chickens." Eli receives an official violation notice in the mail with a $500 fine and threat of legal escalation. The envelope was thick and crisp, the kind of paper that didn't belong in a rural mailbox surrounded by weeds and gravel dust. Eli slid a finger under the seal as he walked back up the porch steps, the hens squawking softly in the distance behind him. He didn't need to open it to know the tone. It was the same tone Karen Whitmore carried in her heels and her clipboard. He unfolded the letter slowly, read it once, then again. $500 for excessive animal noise plus a line about failure to respond may result in legal escalation under HOA subsection C, Article 4. It was printed in fine type, but the message was blunt. Fall in line, or get pushed out. He set the letter down on the kitchen table and poured himself some black coffee, stronger than usual. For a long while, he didn't move. His eyes drifted across the worn cabinets, past the window where his mother's lace curtain still hung, to the hallway at the back of the house. The old room? Clara Jean's room. 10 minutes later, he stood at the foot of her bed, staring at the cedar chest tucked beneath. He hadn't touched it since the funeral. Dust lined the edge like a seal. He knelt slowly, pressed the latch, and lifted the lid. Inside were all the expected things: quilt pieces, a tin of buttons, family photographs in yellowed sleeves. But nestled between two stacks of old church bulletins was the lockbox, small, square, and cold to the touch. He carried it to the kitchen, set it beside the violation notice, and unlocked it with a tiny key still hanging on the back of her bedroom door. Folders, envelopes, town letters. One marked with a bold black stamp. Town of Fairview, a 1976. But he didn't open it yet. Instead, he walked to the hollow cup. The bell above the diner door jingled softly as he stepped inside, and a few heads turned, more out of routine than curiosity. Marvin Ellis sat in the back booth by the window, tinkering with something that looked suspiciously like a vintage decibel meter. "Morning, Marvin," Eli said as he slid into the seat across from him. Marvin looked up. "You come to complain about the eggs, too?" Eli smiled dryly. "Nope, just here for the coffee and the town gossip." "That'll cost you more than $5, Marvin muttered, then nodded toward the counter. "You hear?" HOA's tightening the screws again. "I heard," Eli said. "Karen dropped off a little love letter this morning." Marvin leaned forward. "They really hit you?" $500. "Hellfire," Marvin muttered. "For chickens?" Eli nodded. Ronald Briggs, the mailman, chose that moment to plop into the adjacent booth, sliding his tray of scrambled eggs and toast across the table. "You boys talking chickens?" he asked, grinning. "Always," Eli said. "You hear anything on your route lately?" Ronald glanced around, then leaned in, lowering his voice. "Karen was on the phone with someone outside Lot 12 last week. Didn't see who, but I swear she said the phrase, 'replotting nuisance lots,' and then laughed. I don't like that laugh." Marvin raised a brow. "Nuisance?" "Sounded like she's trying to reclassify properties near the edge of the HOA as code violations," Ronald added. "Yours would be first in line, Eli." Eli shook his head slowly. "They're not just trying to fine me. They want the land." Back at the homestead, Rosa arrived just past lunchtime, a Tupperware of baked beans in hand and a concerned squint on her face. "You look like you dug up a ghost," she said, stepping into the kitchen. "I think I did." Eli nodded toward the open lockbox. "Take a look?" Rosa set down her container and gently lifted the envelope marked Town of Fairview, a 1976. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a folded letter, its ink faded, but still legible. "To whom it may concern," it began, "I, Clara Jean Carter, request formal recognition of the co-op parcel at 14 Candler Lane as a heritage micro-farmstead to be preserved and protected from any future zoning reclassification." Rosa read in silence, her lips moving just slightly. "Keep going," Eli said, watching her closely. At the bottom of the page, just above the signature, a final line had been added. "Filed and certified, Rosa Myers, Town Clerk." Rosa's voice shook as she read it aloud. That was me, 40 years ago. Rosa and Eli visit Town Hall's basement records, only to discover the file, a 1976, has been misfiled. The fluorescent lights in the basement flickered every few minutes, like they were as tired as the old shelves they illuminated. Rosa walked ahead with surprising determination for someone her age, her cane clicking against the tiled floor. Eli followed a few steps behind, the musty scent of cardboard and dust growing thicker the deeper they went. The clerk at the front desk had handed them the key to Archive Row D like it was no big deal. But Eli could feel it in his gut, something about the way she avoided eye contact when he mentioned the file. Rosa stopped at a metal cabinet and pulled open the drawer marked 1975 to 1979. She flipped quickly, then slower, then stopped altogether. "It's not here," she said, her voice tight. Eli stepped forward. "You sure?" "Of course I'm sure." She kept searching, opening the drawer below. Nothing. She opened a drawer from an entirely different year set. There, between 1982, Waterworks, and 1983 Annual Budget Review, sat a single out-of-place manila folder. It had no label, only a crease where a sticker had been torn off. Rosa opened it. Inside was a blank copy of Form 14Z, standard issue for parking disputes, not land designation. Someone had replaced the contents. She looked at Eli, jaw clenched. This file didn't get lost. It got buried. Later that afternoon, Rosa sat hunched over her cluttered home desk, comparing records she'd saved in a private binder to digital PDFs printed from the town hall system. She circled a date on the margin. "Look here," she said, handing the page to Eli. "This access log. File A, 1976, was requested on March 7th by someone logged in under the HOA Council Admin Code." Eli narrowed his eyes. "That's Karen's account." "I can't prove it was her personally," Rosa added, "but I know how these systems work. It wasn't a mistake." Meanwhile, Marvin had set up shop in his garage, which smelled faintly of solder and popcorn. He clicked through a laptop surrounded by circuit boards and unopened mail. On screen, HOA forum threads scrolled past. "Check this out," he said. "Karen's been running community polls about noise complaints. Thing is, half of these complaint letters are identical. Same phrasing, even the typos match." He clicked one open, then another. Both began, "As a concerned neighbor, I believe Mr. Carter's chickens disrupt the peaceful harmony of our neighborhood ambiance." Eli leaned over. "Nobody talks like that." "I know," Marvin said. "They were copy-pasted. I'd bet my best radio this whole thing is staged." That evening, Rosa placed a quiet call to an old contact, Jack Talbot, a young local reporter who'd once covered a dog parade with Pulitzer-level intensity. He met them at Rosa's kitchen table the next day. "You're saying they're trying to force you out," Jack repeated, tapping his pen. "Using noise complaints." "And fake documents," Rosa added. Jack scribbled notes, then looked up. I've heard whispers Karen's more than just an HOA president. Someone told me she's connected to a firm. Summit Development, I think. They're buying up lots across the county. Eli frowned. You think she wants the land? Jack nodded. They've been after properties just like yours. Edge of town, unincorporated, grandfathered-in zoning. Developers love those. The next morning, Ronald pulled his mail truck into Eli's driveway and waved a hand urgently. Saw a group poking around the back edge of your fence last night. Not locals. I recognized one guy. He's in a billboard ad near I-83. Real estate. That was all Eli needed. He spent the afternoon combing through Marvin's files and the printed pages Rosa had saved. At the very bottom of a shared drive, Marvin had hacked from a public HOA link. They found it. A proposal. Community green space conversion. Parcel 27B. Attached, a map of the HOA overlay zone. Eli's property was marked in bold red. His barn, his coop, even the chicken run. Taped to the bottom corner was a yellow sticky note. 5 words in neat handwriting. Push through at next board vote. Don't tell Eli until it's signed. The HOA schedules an emergency vote to repurpose Eli's lot as a community green space. Without informing him. Eli stood on his front porch, the morning breeze tugging at the edge of his flannel collar. In one hand, he held a printed flyer Ronald had slipped into his mailbox that morning, its heading in bold red. Emergency all vote. Tonight, community use zoning updates. The fine print was worse. Parcel 27B, his land, was listed as under review for possible recreational repurposing. No names, no context, no invitation. He stared at the words, then glanced toward the chicken coop. The hens clucked softly, pacing in the sunlight, unaware of how close they were to being erased from the map. Marvin showed up shortly after noon, carrying a stack of printouts and his old recording equipment. I ran a sound study, he said, setting up his laptop on Eli's porch table. Your chickens are quieter than a window AC unit, even during peak squawk. Eli smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You sure? Marvin tapped a folder. Decibel readings, time-stamped, compared to city ordinances. She's got nothing. Rosa arrived a little later, hair set and heels clicking like she was marching into battle. She brought a yellow notepad and a printed version of the Heritage Homestead Certification from 1976, complete with her signature and the town seal. I've written out a speech, she said. You don't need to memorize it. Just speak from your chest. These folks don't know what they're messing with. Inside the hollow cup, Jack Talbot sat by the window, sipping iced tea and fielding texts from his editor. He'd been dropping hints online for days, and interest was growing. Tonight, he planned to live stream the HOA meeting. Any idea how many will show? He asked Rosa when she came in for coffee. More than they're ready for, she said. By 6:45 p.m., the town community center was already half full. Folding chairs lined the tiled floor, and the smell of old coffee and fresh toner hung in the air. Karen stood at the front in a navy pantsuit, clipboard in hand, flanked by 2 HOA board members, Todd and Brenda. The third, Mary Collins, lingered near the exit, avoiding eye contact. Karen called the meeting to order promptly at 7 o'clock. Thank you for coming, she said, voice smooth. We have a single motion this evening, a community repurposing proposal for Parcel 27B. The board has prepared language for a preliminary vote. Point of order, Eli called out, rising from his seat. Karen blinked. This is not a public comment session, Mr. Carter. Then make it one. The room stirred. Rosa stood beside him, holding the folder. Jack raised his phone, already live. I have here the original designation of Parcel 27B, Eli said. Filed in 1976, signed and sealed by the then town clerk, Rosa Myers. It confirms this land as a protected heritage homestead." He handed the paper to Todd, who looked at it like it was written in another language. Marvin stepped forward next, setting his speaker on the floor and holding up a microphone. "This is a 10-minute sound composite recorded over 5 separate mornings," he said. "Ambient sound, coop recordings, and street traffic comparison. The chickens don't even break 65 decibels. You know what does? A lawnmower?" Karen crossed her arms, expression unchanged. Marvin opened a second folder. "Also, under Article 3, subsection B of our own bylaws, no zoning changes can proceed without a 30-day public notice period. This meeting was called 48 hours ago." Jack scanned the room with his camera. "Thousands are watching this," he said, "and I just got a ping from someone at the county zoning office." Brenda leaned over and whispered to Karen. She shook her head sharply. Mary Collins finally stepped forward. Her voice was low, but carried. "This wasn't right," she said. "We didn't vote. We were told to sign pre-filled documents." Karen glared, but didn't speak. Todd cleared his throat. I resign," he said. "Effective immediately." Brenda stood up. "Me too." Eli remained still as the room erupted in murmurs. One of the board members leaned toward him on the way out. "She bullied us into this." And then, just as the tension seemed to be slipping into chaos, a voice rang out from the back. "Is this what Fairview's become?" The room turned. Standing in the doorway was a young woman, late 20s, sharp features softened by weariness. In her hands, a brown folder. Her voice shook, but her eyes were steady. It was Karen's estranged daughter, Emily, shaking, holding a folder. Emily hands Eli the folder, emails, meeting notes, and a deed draft with his name misspelled. The garage smelled faintly of solder, printer ink, and cherry cough drops, the kind Marvin kept in every jacket he owned. Papers covered the workbench. Extension cords dangled from the rafters. At the center of it all sat the folder Emily had brought in, still unopened, waiting like a fuse. Eli stood with his hands in his pockets, face unreadable. Emily leaned against the wall, arms folded tight. "I didn't know," she said for the 3rd time. "Not everything, but enough." Marvin flipped the folder open and scanned the first few pages. He let out a low whistle. "These aren't just HOA notes. These are emails between your mother and someone at Whitmore Realty. That's your father's firm, isn't it?" Emily gave a slow nod. "Divorced 8 years now, but apparently they're still business partners when it suits them." Marvin spread out the documents. "Meeting summaries, joint planning memos. Here, strategy to target underutilized properties." That's legalese for bully small landowners off their soil. He tapped another page. "This one's a draft deed transfer. It's got Eli's name on it, but spelled Ellie Carter. You ever give anyone permission to file this?" Eli shook his head. Rosa, sitting near the open garage door with a mug of sweet tea, muttered, "They were building the trap long before you heard the first click." Emily looked like she wanted to sink through the concrete. "I found letters with my name signed at the bottom," she said. "Petitions, surveys, public support forms for the Green Space Project. I never wrote them. I think my mom forged them using old-school forms, stuff she kept from when I was in high school. She knew I wouldn't notice." Outside, Ronald pulled up in his red postal jeep, carrying an envelope and a manila envelope under one arm. "I've got photos," he said, stepping into the garage without ceremony. "Remember I told you about those guys walking the edge of your fence, Eli? Snapped 'em with my phone. One of 'em's on a billboard off Route 41, something like Buy Rural, Live Royale, real estate firm out of St. Louis." Jack arrived a few minutes later, laptop bag slung across his shoulder. "I ran a search on the town clerk records site," he said, setting up at the workbench. Turns out a zoning change was submitted for Parcel 27B under the Community Beautification Clause. Only thing is, he clicked to enlarge a screen. It was marked as uncontested. That means no complaints, no owner resistance. Eli leaned over his shoulder. I never saw that. Jack nodded. Because they never sent it. The paperwork was filed directly through the HOA channel, with Karen acting as proxy under emergency session rules. Emily swallowed hard. She knew no one would look twice. It was all dressed up in civic language. Public gardens, meditation space, reduced environmental noise. Marvin grunted. This wasn't about noise. This was a land grab. Jack clicked again, pulling up a map overlay. They've done this in 2 other towns. Same wording, same process. File a rezoning quietly. Flood the board with fake complaints. Use family firms to scoop up the land cheap. Silence fell for a moment. Then Jack looked at Eli. Are you okay with me going live with this? Eli didn't hesitate. Do it. An hour later, the article hit the homepage of the Fairview Press. HOA or hostile takeover. The quiet seizure of Carter's coop. Jack included screenshots of the emails, photos of the men scouting the property, and a clip from the emergency HOA meeting. The comment section exploded. By morning, the town council had posted a notice online. Open hearing scheduled. Parcel 27B and related HOA concerns. Public welcome. A sidebar note added that a state zoning review investigator would attend. Rosa was pouring herself another cup of tea when her phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but picked up anyway. Hello? A familiar voice, raspy with age, but firm. Rosa, it's Frank over at the county records office. Just saw the story. You might want to dig into the approval stamps on that rezoning file. I never signed it. On the morning of the town hearing, Eli finds a basket of eggs on his porch, with a note. We're with you. He stood for a long moment in the doorway, still holding the screen open, a beam of morning light casting long shadows across the wooden boards. The basket sat neatly on the top step, lined with a red gingham cloth. The handwriting on the note was unfamiliar, but the message didn't need a signature. The hens clucked in the distance, their morning chorus rising like clockwork. Eli smiled, just a little. Inside the house, Clara Jean's old clock ticked on the kitchen wall. The hearing started at 9 a.m. Sharp, but the parking lot outside Town Hall was full by 8:30. Cars lined both sides of the street, and people streamed into the chamber with folded arms, thermoses, and quiet determination. Inside, the room buzzed with tension. Jack stood near the back, setting up his tripod. Rosa and Marvin flanked Eli on either side of the first row. Emily sat behind him, folder in hand, expression calm but pale. The HOA board took their seats first. Karen entered last, heels clicking across the linoleum floor. She carried nothing but a phone and a folder tucked under her arm. A state investigator, a tall man in a charcoal suit with a badge clipped to his lapel, addressed the room. We're here today to consider evidence related to the zoning and procedural handling of Parcel 27B, he said. The floor is now open. Eli stepped up to the podium. His voice didn't shake. He laid out Clara Jean's original certification papers, laminated now. He played clips from Marvin's sound recordings, low clucks, ambient wind, a dog barking blocks away louder than any hen. He showed side-by-side images of the forged deed with his misspelled name and a properly filed one. Then Emily rose and handed her folder to the investigator. These are emails between Karen Whitmore and Whitmore Realty, she said. There are documents here with my forged signature. I'm testifying today because I believe this was an abuse of public trust and family. Karen stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. My own daughter has been manipulated by these people. This is a smear campaign. The investigator held up one of the stamped zoning forms. This stamp was flagged by the county clerk, he said. It doesn't match the ones actually issued that week. The date is misaligned, and the ink color is inconsistent with standard protocol. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came out. The room remained silent, the only sound the whir of Jack's camera zooming in. Brenda, one of the remaining board members, cleared her throat. "We move to remove Karen Whitmore from her position, effective immediately," she said. Todd seconded it without hesitation. The vote was unanimous. Karen let out a dry laugh, then turned on her heel and marched out. The doors swung behind her like a final period on a long sentence. After the meeting, the state investigator addressed the group once more. "Until a full legal review is completed," he said, "all development activity related to Parcel 27B is suspended. We'll be investigating the HOA's structure and related filings." Applause broke out, not loud, but steady. People clapped with the kind of relief that comes after holding your breath too long. Outside, the sun had broken through the clouds. Eli walked home the long way, past the diner where Ronald waved from the window. Someone had chalked a chicken on the sidewalk beside the door with the words, "Let 'em sing." When Eli reached his property, he stopped in his tracks. Half a dozen neighbors stood in the grass near his coop. Rosa was among them, holding a brush. Marvin knelt with a small toolbox. A new wooden gate leaned against the fence, unfinished, but nearly there. On the front panel in fresh black paint, it read, "Carter Homestead, established. 1947." He didn't say a word, just nodded and picked up a hammer. The next morning, the mail arrived early. Among the usual circulars and one last flyer for artificial turf was a letter from the local school board. It was printed on thick paper and signed in blue ink. They wanted to partner with him to launch a farm-to-classroom education program, workshops, field trips, maybe even an annual fair. It was an offer, a future. And as the hens clucked behind him, Eli Carter stood in the doorway of his old farmhouse, holding the letter with both hands, and smiled. The morning the community came together wasn't marked by banners or speeches, but by a handmade gate and a basket of eggs left in silence. Through hardship, Eli discovered that justice doesn't always come from loud voices, but from steady ones that refuse to be silenced. Sometimes protecting a patch of land means protecting the spirit rooted in it. And when neighbors stand shoulder to shoulder, even the smallest farm can withstand the biggest storm. Like a rooster crowing at dawn, truth has a way of being heard, no matter who tries to quiet it.